I feel like playing something old school today. Yes, Spyro, let's give that a crack. That's weird. What the fuck? Yes, it really is hard to ignore the quote-unquote inspirations that this game has taken from the God of War franchise. But if you do like God of War, light RPG elements, magic, and also dragons, well, this is the game for you. Releasing in 2008, Spyro Dawn of the Dragons was the third installment in a trilogy of Spyro games. Now, why am I talking about the third installment of a trilogy? Because this one's the best one, the other two are a little bit stinky, and you don't really need to play the other ones to enjoy this one. You can just watch a story recap on YouTube and play this. Now, for an ultra quick rundown for the story in this game, Spyro and Cynder are released from their prison. Cynder is kind of like Spyro's girlfriend or significant other, you know, the thing that you can't get. Now he and Cynder embark on their adventure, going around helping a bunch of furries, mole people. You take down the destroyer, you take down the purple dragon named Malifaux, who tries to manipulate Spyro by telling him the fate of purple dragons is to bring on the destruction of the world, and Spyro's like, smacks a bitch, and then Cynder and Spyro fly off into the sunset, bringing upon a new age of Spyro games and many more sequels, right? I wish. We'll touch on that in a second though. Now, Spyro for most people is just this childish franchise following a small purple dragon that can't fly. He has basic attacks and light platforming. At least that's what it was until this game came along. Now, Dawn of the Dragon excelled this franchise to new heights. Do you get it? Because you can fly in this game. Whatever. And this elevation was not only in its new additions to gameplay, but its level designs and maturing the franchise as a whole.
You don't have to do anything. Let's just go.
Where, Cynder? There'll be nothing left. The world is breaking apart. But I think I can stop it. I think I'm meant to.
Then I'm with you. I love you.
Now, the past Spyro game stories were from fine to pretty good, but the difference is in Dawn of the Dragon is that it really felt like they were taking the story as well as every other element in this game very seriously, and it quickly deviated itself away from past Spyro games, tackling more mature themes with a real understanding that the player who grew up on the older Spyro games were now growing up themselves. So this game reflected an older audience. In essence, Spyro was growing up with us, and therefore there was a clear consideration of its player base, which only made the swap to Skylanders even more jarring.
This is disgusting. This is awful in every way. If I could kill it, I would.
Now, Skylanders was obviously geared toward a younger audience and was super successful, but I can't help but feel the Spyro franchise was done dirty by this sudden pivot, leaving Spyro's story in limbo since 2008. Now, what was with all that God of War stuff at the start of the video? In playing this game, it is very hard to not notice where inspiration has come from, especially in the God of War series. The opening tutorial has you fighting a giant lava monster, which is very God of War-esque. Spyro also has colored items that feed health, magic, and upgrade points. Yes, these aren't orbs, but they are colored crystals. Both have this circular upgrade wheel, almost identical fonts on the numbers, and very similar sound effects. There's also a system where if you collect a certain amount of items, depending on how many you get, you could upgrade your overall health bar and also your magic meter. This game also has a rage mode similar to God of War. And this is just naming a few so far. But there's also the font on the combo counters being extremely similar. Spyro has a blade encasing his health and magic meters, very similar to how Kratos has it in God of War. And why does Spyro have a blade? He's a fucking dragon. He doesn't need a blade. And some of these levels are also very God of War inspired as well. Take this level where a literal fucking war is happening and those skeletons almost look like skeletal Spartan warriors. And last but not least, Spyro also has a sex minigame too. Spyro, no! So all that aside, what exactly makes this one of the best Spyro games in my opinion? Well, right out the gate, this game quickly separates itself from previous titles as it does a lot of new things. This game can either be played in single player mode or multiplayer mode up to 2 players, and this can be changed at any time on the fly. A 2-player Spyro game, how does that work? Well, you are tethered to another dragon by the name of Cynder, so each player can choose a dragon to play as, or if you're a filthy loner like I am, play single player and you can swap between the two at any given time. Now this mechanic right here where you are tethered to one other dragon was going to be a serious make or break, but I'm happy to say that if you are playing on the single player mode, the other dragon you're controlling doesn't really get in the way. It could have been a real case of the other character dragging you down. You do sometimes get pulled back by the other dragon when it is caught on something, but for the most part, they actually did this link mechanic really well. And they even got pretty inventive in implementing it into game puzzles through the use of a tug and tow mechanic and pendulums. And of course, I wanted to see how fast you could swing with the other dragon attached, and turns out you can go pretty fast. In addition to this, both Spyro and Cynder have their own unique magic abilities, 4 abilities each to be exact.
Fire, electricity, ice, and earth. Poison, fear, wind, and shadow.
Now, do you see where I'm going with this? The combat in this game is insane. You can freely swap between both dragons, as I said before, who collectively have 8 magic abilities, swapping on the fly, throwing out a bunch of random magic attacks, which all can be further upgraded and improved, as well as a range of melee combos elevated this game beyond anything previously seen in a Spyro game before. The freedom to throw hands however you want, with whoever you want, and the ways in which you can accumulate such a high combo count is actually astonishing for this game. So what else does this game do differently from other Spyro games? Well, to my knowledge, this was the first Spyro game to truly implement an armor system. You can find a variety of different armor pieces hidden throughout the levels that can be equipped to one of the 2 dragons, all of which will provide some kind of buff. There might be higher defense, one might regen your magic, one might increase melee attack damage, one might increase fury power, the list goes on, but this added just enough variety to the gameplay to make the player feel like they had somewhat of a say as to how their dragons played. And given that this game also has many open areas, it gave a real and true incentive for players to actually explore the environments around them. It does look beautiful, but this just added an extra bonus. Now yes, this addition of armor is extremely light on and there isn't too many options, but for a game like this, it serves its purpose perfectly. Now with all this talk about this being the best Spyro game of all time, there must be some negatives, right? Of course there are. Let's get into those. Now as alluded to before, this game does take inspiration from God of War, and when you do try to mimic something as good as God of War, it leaves your game feeling like a hollow impression of those segments you're trying to copy from that better game. When this game isn't trying to be a God of War clone, it is fantastic. Now this game introduces a free flying mechanic, which is a welcome change and is something that players have been asking for a long time. However, it's not really that free. You cannot control your own altitude. Throughout all the flying clips that you've seen in this video, I've simply flapped my wings and pushed forward. All changes in altitude have been as a result of predetermined settings within this game. Now keep that in mind, because in this game there is also a really weird and hard push for platforming. But having this free flying mechanic as well as this push for platforming creates a huge disconnect in this game. Almost like the game struggling with its own identity and not knowing what it really wants to be. On the one hand, you want players to be free and finally fly like they should have been when controlling a dragon with wings. But then you go ahead and limit the altitude and taking that control away from players. You also have sequences where you force the players down to the ground when they could easily fly when the game makes no indication as to why the player can't fly to certain areas. Take this for example. These platforms here look like something that I could easily reach as a dragon, right? Well, no, I have to climb this wall and do a wall run over here. I can't just fly over to this thing, I have to do it in the way that the game tells me, even though I have in the back of my mind, why can't I do this? I can free fly now. The game is full of moments like this where it forces you into average platforming sequences where I kept asking myself, why can't I just fly there? Oh, that's right, it's just a bullshit platforming sequence shoved down my throat. Having both systems fighting against each other diminished both experiences, leaving the player somewhat frustrated and feeling like this free flying mechanic is really not as useful as it seems in theory. It also made me realize why it's taken so long for Spyro to have a flying mechanic, because giving him this ability renders the platforming useless. Now this last thing isn't necessarily to do with the game, it's just more with how the franchise has been handled. We finish this game with Spyro and Cynder defeating Malefor, and we see them flying around. And upon finishing this game, it really felt like they finally figured out how to make a Spyro game that was more for a mature audience. A great stopping point for this trilogy, but a fantastic stepping off point to continue this franchise.
Each time a dragon dies, a new page is written in this book. I've done my best, but I can't seem to find any trace of Spyro.
Well, young dragon, where might you be?
So, a fantastic game, a strong and intuitive ending to a trilogy, and a story leaving players wanting more, forever counting down to the purple dragon's return. Hopefully one day he can fly back into our lives with a new and original series, but maybe not. Maybe I'm just longing for these characters to return from my childhood because that was the last time I truly felt happy. Whoa, let's not go there. Let's talk about giving me money. If you want to help support what I do, become a Ko-fi supporter. You'll get your name at the end of the video like these beautiful people here, and you'll also get early access to these videos as well. Now, if you did like the video, please go ahead, leave it a like, sub to the channel, and let me know in the comments down below what was your favorite Spyro game across any different platform and any year of release. But that's all for today's video, guys. Take care out there, stay safe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care, guys. Bye.